Did you see the movie, The Polar Express, about a fantasy train trip? Well, I'll never forget it. In fact, one of my favorite parts was when the conductor said, "One thing about trains, it doesn't matter where they're going. What matters is that you decide to get on." And you can't board a train without a ticket. So today we're going to talk about buying your first ticket to travel on Amtrak. It's kind of like the old Beatles song, she's got a ticket to ride. And in fact, I'll bet that a lot of you have never ever purchased a ticket to ride on the train. And if that's the case, then today's video is just for you. Because today we're going to give you some of the best guidelines about purchasing a ticket to ride on Amtrak. With everything from which seats to select to the discounts that might be available for you, and making the right decision for your particular travel needs. And we're not going to talk about price, just about price, but we're going to try to find the best value for your journey. Because buying the ticket at the right price and getting the best possible value is one of the most important steps that you're going to make in preparing for your particular train adventure. But that trip is going to be a real adventure. So, all aboard. So you're ready to take your first trip on Amtrak. If you recall, in our last video, we talked about how to get ready for your journey. We talked about the best way to choose your destination, to plan out the routes that you're going to take to reach that destination. We talked about making good connections in hub cities and hub stations, and how to manage those connections, how to plan for those connections. And as you might recall, this is a series of videos. They're designed for the person who's going to take their very first trip on Amtrak. It's a step-by-step guide to taking their first rail adventure. And, I see a lot of information online about Amtrak travel and people going on trips, but I don't see too many that do the whole gamut of, going through the entire process of preparing for the trip. So I wanted to give us a full-blown guide for anybody who has never taken a trip by rail. And this is exactly what this video series is all about. And like any other process that you go through, Amtrak has its own learning curve when it comes to planning for and taking a trip by rail. In fact, this is the second video in the series, and there will be more videos to come. So you want to make sure that this is a great time for you to subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss any of these videos. It's a great series. In fact, you can share it with your friends who may be thinking about taking a trip of their own. And if you've got a specific question that you don't seem to find the answer for in this series, drop me a comment or send me an email, and I'll make sure I get back to you. In fact, I may include my answer to your question in the next video. So let's take a journey.
Pre-stage flux chiller starboard. Main stage flux chillers port.
Running lights
Main
on.
stage flux chiller starboard.
Enabled.
Intercooler status.
Stand by.
Space
Very well,
maintenance
Mr. Sellers.
restoration coils.
You may clear all moorings.
Crystal.
Aye, sir.
Check.
Air equalization automatic on.
Check.
All moorings are
Emergency
clear,
shutdown
Captain.
Thank
trends.
you.
Battery relay bus.
Check. Lieutenant, have you ever piloted a starship out of space dock?
Never, sir.
Take her out, Mr. Savick.
Aye, sir.
For everything, there is a first time, Lieutenant. Don't you agree, Admiral?
Aft thrusters, Mr. Sulu.
Aft thrusters.
Would you like a tranquilizer?
Ahead 1/4 impulse power.
And 1/4 impulse power.
Yes, there is a first time for everything. And at first glance, you might think, okay, we're going to buy a ticket. Yeah, that's pretty basic, right? We've all purchased tickets. I mean, you bought tickets to go to a concert, right? Or maybe to an event. Maybe you bought airfare, or you bought a ticket to go on a cruise. But what makes it different buying a ticket to travel on a train? I mean, what's so different about it? Well, buying a ticket is a simple transaction. I mean, you look up the ticket, you find the right destination, and you put in your credit card number, and there you have it. It's done. You bought a ticket. But did you get the best deal for it? I mean, did you really get the good value for your purchase? I mean, think about it. When you buy a ticket to a concert, there are a lot of things you think about. I mean, number one, you want to get as close to the stage as you can, or these days, as close to the stage as you can afford. You want to make sure you have an unobstructed view. You want to be in a place where you can hear great sound, and you want to get a comfortable seat. I mean, there are a lot of things to think about when you buy a ticket. But buying a ticket for a train, any ticket, actually, it's a simple process. But there are things about buying a ticket for Amtrak travel that can spell the difference between just a trip or a true adventure. The first thing you need to think about are some of the misconceptions and the myths about traveling on Amtrak. I hear a lot of negative thoughts sometimes when it comes to traveling by Amtrak. And it's often because a lot of those people never even traveled on Amtrak, so they have no idea what it's really all about. Or maybe they traveled on there one time and it didn't turn out the way they want, so they have a tainted view of what it's all about. And usually that happens because the trip wasn't what they expected. And the trip, if it wasn't what they expected, that tells me that the problem was that the train or the trip, it was their expectations. But if train travel is so poor and outdated mode of travel, then why have so many countries made huge investments in massive, high-speed, high-technology rail service and rail systems? I mean, what do they know about rail travel or train travel that we don't know here in the United States? I can honestly tell you, after living in and traveling around Europe for many years, I can tell you that train travel is a vital part of European transportation systems. In fact, there are those who have tried it and it just didn't work out for them. So what we're talking about here is, when you talk about transportation, we're talking about apples and oranges. Apples being maybe airline travel, and the oranges, train travel. Because the value of train travel, the value that it brings to the table cannot be rivaled by any other form of modern day transportation. When you think about the safety, the reliability, the economy, and it is a personally enriching experience when you travel by train. But when it comes to buying your Amtrak ticket, there are a lot of things you need to consider. First of all, you want to make sure that you get the details right, that you're purchasing the right ticket for the right accommodations for you to reach your final destination. I mean, you want to make sure that you're not paying for the trip. You want to make sure that you're not overpaying, for the trip that you want to take. I mean, you want to know about the best deals, the best bargains that are out there, the best discounts that are available. Because the less that you spend on a train ticket or on any kind of ticket for transportation, the more money you're going to have for other things that you want to do on this trip. So remember that the timing of your purchase can also make a big difference in your availability of tickets, the price that you pay for those tickets. And you'll want to make sure that you sign up for and take advantage of bonus programs that will add value to your Amtrak experience long after you have taken your trip. In fact, you'll want to make sure that you select the right seating or maybe a sleeper compartment for your adventure, because that can impact your trip and how much you pay and how much you enjoy your particular journey. Now, there are some basic things you need to know before you go on your trip or even purchase your ticket, okay? Preparation, before you even buy your ticket, preparation is key. Before you ever open up the Amtrak app or access their website, you're going to want to make certain that you've done your homework about your trip. Just like I said, kind of like buying a concert ticket, you want to do your homework. Make certain that you've studied and you've chosen the correct route to arrive at your destination at the right time. And there are a few things about planning this journey on Amtrak that are very different than planning for a journey when you travel by, for example, on a plane. For example, some cities have more than one Amtrak station. So you'll want to make sure that you're arriving at the right station, especially if you're trying to connect to another route or another train. For example, Boston has 2 train stations, one on the north side, one on the south side, and they connect to different lines. So if you're going, say, from New York City up to Boston and then across to, let's say, Buffalo, New York, then you're going to want to connect to a specific station in Boston. So you need to do your homework to make sure you're getting the right route to the right station. Also, arriving at the wrong station can mean that you have to, make a scramble to get to your next connection. And you also want to make sure that you will understand the details about the day of your trip. For example, what time you need to be there. Now, if you're flying on a plane, you got to be there, like 2 hours before departure time. On most Amtrak segments or Amtrak trips, you only need to be there about half an hour before. But if you're at a station one of these stations where it's first come, first serve, they don't really assign a seat, and you get on the train, you just take the first available seat that you come along, you might want to get to the front of the line and get the best possible selection. So that may mean you get there a little bit early to make sure you get the best possible situation. And you want to make sure if the station is a staffed station. Some of the smaller stations in rural areas, for example, they may not be staffed. They may just be a platform with a rain cover over it, kind of like a bus stop. And it's a nice station. It's an easy way because the train stops, you get on, the train takes off again. But if it's an unstaffed station, that means you're not going to be able to check your bags if you want to check them on your trip. There won't be a red cap attendant to help you unload and offload your luggage, especially if you need some type of special assistance with your boarding. You might also want to check out the parking. Is there parking available? Is it secure? Is it a covered parking area? And if not, you might want to get a friend to take you to the station or get an Uber to the station. And one question comes up, have you ever been to that station before? Now, this is really important. If you're going to be going to a large station, let's say like Chicago Union Station or LA Union Station or New York Penn Station, and you don't know your way around, those are huge stations. I mean, we're talking the size of football fields. They're major, complexes. But if you go online, every one of those stations has a map. It's a layout of the full station, and you can see where everything is, where you go to check in, where you wait for your train, where you check your baggage. I like to study those maps to see what shops and restaurants are available in the area. Maybe I want to buy a tube of toothpaste or something while I'm there. But the bottom line, it's important that you know where you're going. Study the information that's out there and available. There's nothing worse than feeling lost in an unfamiliar location. The next thing that you need to do is to get familiar with the Amtrak app or the website. Now, honestly speaking, the Amtrak website and app are a little bit of a learning curve. It's probably not the most intuitive or user-friendly site that I've seen when it comes to travel sites. But once you learn how to use it, there is a wealth of information about every single trip. I mean, not only can you buy your ticket there, but it will give you all the details about your trip. It will tell you every station, every stop that train trip, that segment is going to take along the way, every single station. It'll tell you how long that they're going to stop there, if it's 10 minutes or if it's an hour. That means that you can plan for a bit of, let's say, fresh air and exercise. That you can, if it's going to be there a long time, you can explore around a little bit. And some of the stops can last up to an hour or more because trains do have to refuel and resupply, maybe even change out to a new crew. And you can check to see if the train is on time. You can check the status of the train and check to see if it's delayed or there's some kind of special advisory about that particular trip. I like to go on there a few days before my trip and see, okay, is this train running on time on an average? What can I expect? And you can get information also about discounts, about ticket plans, and details about every route nationwide. And once you purchase your ticket, you can actually track and show the details about every trip that you plan. In fact, if somebody's picking you up at your destination, they can track your particular train trip. But the last thing you need to do is that you need to sign up for the Amtrak Rewards program. Now, this is a totally free program. You don't have to pay for it. It's kind of like a frequent flyer program for train travel. But this one is just for Amtrak. And you'll receive bonus points for every dollar that you spend on Amtrak. And the points can be used for future travel. Once you get up to a certain level of points, it will also give you access to the VIP lounges in the major stations and even making purchases using those points to buy other things. But when you sign up for this free service, you get all notifications about upcoming promotions, discounted fares, and other special offers that Amtrak comes up with. This is like free money. I mean, if you don't take advantage of that, it's like leaving money on the table. So make sure you sign up for the rewards program. Now, there are 5 things I'm going to give you that you need to know when you purchase your ticket. You may want to write these down. It's very important details. First of all, you want to know the route for your particular trip. You want to understand the route and exactly the length and duration of your trip, because it's key to things like, what kind of seat do I want to get? What kind of accommodation do I need? I mean, if my route is only between, let's say, Dallas and San Antonio, that's a day trip. So you may not want to buy a sleeper compartment, for example. It may be a little bit of an overkill. Coach seating is great for shorter trips and day trips, maybe even a single night trip. And, some people are a little more adventuresome than others, and they can rest well for one night in a reclining seat, depending on it depends on your personal preferences and your needs. But a sleeper compartment often works best for longer routes, multiple nights, privacy issues, or maybe you have multiple travelers and you all want to stay together in one space. So the route if you study the route, that you can choose the best possible seating, and the route you choose might also help you decide what kind of ticket that you need to buy. If you need a ticket that, for example, that will allow you to reach multiple destinations, make multiple stops along the way, then you might want to consider a USA Rail Pass, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's a ticket that you can purchase that allows you to make multiple trips and multiple stops along the way. So educating yourself about the route that you're taking is going to give you a lot of insight into what kind of ticket that you need to purchase. Another important thing is taking advantage of discounted fares. I mean, there are a lot of discounts out there for certain people and certain groups. For example, if you got hair this color, then you could probably get a senior discount, which is 10% right off the top, and that applies to most coach seating. Does not apply to some of the other discounted programs. Doesn't apply. You get a little bit of a discount on a sleeper compartment, but you also get discounts for small children. There are discounts for students, for military personnel, and just to mention a few. There are also multiple ride discounts. Like I said before, the USA Rail Pass is a discounted ticket that allows you to ride, numerous trips for a lower fare. California also has a rail pass of their own that allows for multiple trips inside the state of California, and there are others as well. So check on the website, and it lists all of those. And these will allow you to take multiple trips and make multiple stops at a discounted rate. Now, keep in mind, if these discounted rates and these multiple stop tickets like the USA Rail Pass, they do come with restrictions. In fact, I have one video on my YouTube page about traveling with the USA Rail Pass. So there are some restrictions on how you can plan those trips and what a stop all entails and so forth. So you want to check that out. So take the time to look into what discounts are available that may be available to your particular trip. And one of the things I would encourage you to do, especially if you're new to travel and you're getting ready to take your first trip, call the Amtrak's customer service hotline. That's 1-800-USA-RAIL for advice. These people are really nice and courteous, have a lot of experience in these tickets and these programs, and they can give you some really good advice on when's a good time to buy it, or if your particular trip would be, what ticket would be best for your particular trip. Another important thing when you buy your ticket is looking for ways to save when you're planning your trip. Now, sometimes you might consider a combination of tickets for a longer excursion. Now, for the purpose of these series of videos, I'm using the example of the trip that I'm going to be taking this next summer. I'm going to be traveling over 7,000 miles and going through about 15 different states. And sometimes you might consider a combination of tickets, and that's what I'm going to be doing. And for example, on the longer routes, like from here to Los Angeles, Central Texas to Los Angeles, I'm going to be getting a sleeper compartment because that's 2.5 days and 2 full nights on the train. So I'm going to be looking at that. Now on the shorter day excursions, I purchase tickets just to sit in a coach seat as opposed to the longer routes. Now, so it's a combination of tickets instead of having a single ticket to cover all of the routes. And that can save you some money, for example. One of the things I would encourage you not to do is to buy a round trip ticket. Now, on airline travel, you can get some discounts doing round trip. Not so on Amtrak. Basically, if you do a round trip, you're just booking the fact that you're going to go somewhere and come back on the same route. You really don't get any big break in price. And that can be a little offsetting because you never know if you're going to change your plans or there might be some interruptions. You might also consider a less popular route. When I say less popular, I mean a route that's not as heavily traveled, for example, to get to your same destination. There may be more than one way. For example, if you're going from LA to Chicago, there is the Texas Eagle route, which goes straight across, through Arizona and New Mexico and to San Antonio, Texas, then turns north to Chicago. But then there's also the Southwest Chief, which is also another route from Amtrak that leaves Los Angeles, goes straight across Arizona, New Mexico, and goes up through Kansas, all the way up to Chicago. It's a shorter route, and so it's less expensive. Another thing is looking at off-season or off-peak travel. You can get some better discounts, especially on the routes that are really popular. Like the California Zephyr is one of the most popular routes. In fact, it's so crowded in the summertime that they actually have to limit the amount of time that you can spend, let's say, in the observation car. And so, because they want everybody to have an opportunity because the train is packed. But if you go off-season or you go a little bit off-peak, then you can get a better deal. Traveling midweek, as opposed to traveling on a weekend, can also make a difference in the price that you pay. In fact, the trip that I'm getting ready to take, I'm going to be going from Denver to Chicago. And if I was looking at leaving on a Sunday, heading to Chicago, but if I leave on a Tuesday or Wednesday instead, that's going to mean a savings of over $200 on that same route. Why? Because it's a very popular route for weekend travel. So midweek travel is much less expensive. Now, another way to save is to purchase your ticket well in advance. I've seen several videos online talking about, train travel is so expensive. And these are usually news stations that are doing some kind of news network is doing comparing airline travel to train travel. And they say, I'm going to travel tomorrow on this train line. And look how expensive it is. And that's because unlike airlines, the airline industry, you're not going to be able to score a last-minute deal when you buy tickets on Amtrak. The tickets are much less expensive the earlier you purchase a ticket. And when I talk about early, I'm not talking about a week or two. I'm talking about maybe several months. If you know your plan is fixed, you can purchase that several months in advance, and don't worry, you can cancel it if you need to and get a refund on those tickets. But I found it very helpful when I'm planning my trip. If I don't know, I'm unsure if I'm going to get the right deal, call 1-800-USA-RAIL and get their advice. They're great at giving direction. Now, I get a lot of questions about which is better, taking a trip in coach or taking a trip in a sleeper compartment. And I've often been asked that question, because there's a huge difference sometimes in the price between a coach class ticket and a sleeper compartment. And in fact, sometimes it's 3 to 4 times as expensive to travel in a sleeper compartment than in a coach seat. And, I make choices, I make that selection all the time myself. If you're going from, let's say, from Central Texas here where I live to Los Angeles, you can get, if you purchase it, in advance, you can get a one-way ticket in coach for less than $200. Not bad, right? And that's a good, but, you're going to be sleeping in that seat. You're going to be traveling in that seat for the entire time. That's two and a half days worth of travel plus nights. So one of the first considerations that I make when I think about, do I want to go in coach or do I want to go in a sleeper compartment, is I look at, for example, very obviously, how many days and nights will this trip take? Is it going to be several nights, 2 or maybe 3 nights that are going to be on this train? Is it going to be a long extended trip? And next thing I do is that I compare the price difference between this coach and the lowest end sleeper compartment, because usually I'm traveling alone, I'm traveling solo, and so I look at the roomette, which is the least expensive of the sleeper compartments. So here's what I look at when I look at the cost. I look at the cost of the seat, but I also look at the fact that I'm going to be on that train for more than maybe a day or two, or even more, and I'm going to have to be buying meals. Now, if you travel in a sleeper compartment, your meals, and when I say meals in a sleeper compartment, I don't mean snacks down in the snack bar. I mean Michelin-rated dining experience. I mean, these meals are something to write home about. I mean, they're the meals when you are in a sleeper compartment, all your meals are included in that sleeper. I see so many videos out there about people saying, oh, if you get a sleeper car, you get complimentary meals. They're not complimentary, you're paying for them. So it's added into the value of that upgrade. And in most cases, if you'll take the price, here's what I do. I take the price of a coach seat, and then I take the cost of what it would cost me to eat in the dining car, not the cafe car, but the dining car meals for that particular trip. And I add up the cost, because if you add up the cost of eating a full day in the dining car, the meals plus your tips and so forth, it adds up to about $100 a day. So if you add all the meals and put it on top of the cost of a coach seat, usually it reduces the difference in that price for maybe $100 to $200 more than the coach seat alone plus the meals. So a footnote here, make sure to consider the times that you're traveling, because if you're let's say you look at something and you think, okay, this is going to take 2 days. I'm leaving this day. I'm going to get there the next day. But depending on the time of your departure and the time of your arrival, it's a 2-day trip. Of course, you're leaving one day and getting there the next, but you don't get a full day's meal the first day and the full day. You may be leaving at 1:30 in the afternoon, which means you miss breakfast and lunch, and you only get the evening meal, and you're going to get there to your destination at 11 o'clock in the morning, which means you only get breakfast the next day. So you're not talking about 2 full schedules of meals for that time period. So use that formula. Make sure that you take in consideration how many meals would be included in that formula. So this formula begins to make a lot of sense, especially if you're talking about 2 people traveling together. Because that first person, for example, that same route that costs $200 to LA or less than $200 is going to cost you close to $600 in a roomette sleeper compartment. Now, that first person is going to pay that heavy premium. But the second person, if you've got 2 people traveling, only pays a couple of $100 more. So take into account all of those differences, and take also into account the fact that when you travel in a roomette, it's considered first class travel on a train. It comes at a premium, but you also get a comfortable place to sleep. You get turned down service at night. You get, someone that comes in and makes up your bed in the morning. You get in a larger bedroom. You get access to a private bath and a shower and toilet and a private lavatory. So all of those things can be factored in to the benefits of using or getting a sleeper compartment. Now, the last tip that I want to give you here is to consider a seldom used alternative. And this can make a real difference in how your trip really goes, how it plays out. Because I want you to factor in the possibility or the alternative of combining your regular route travel with regional carriers. Now, let me explain that. In my trip this summer, I'm going to be going from here to Los Angeles and then Los Angeles to Seattle. Well, Amtrak's Coast Starlight that will take me from LA to Seattle is a single trip per day. There's only one train that leaves LA every day headed toward Seattle. That means if I'm going to Seattle on the Coast Starlight, then there's only one arrival time in Seattle, and it's late in the afternoon, okay? In other words, I can't arrive there at 10 o'clock in the morning. I can't arrive there at 9 o'clock in the morning. I am dedicated and I've committed myself to arriving there late that afternoon. the next afternoon. So that's the Coast Starlight schedule. Now, not to mention, one of the things that comes into play there is the fact that if you're going to Seattle in the summertime, if you're staying there for a couple of days, because I'm going to be staying in the Pacific Northwest for about 3 days, and the hotels there are very expensive in the summertime. We're talking $300 to $400 a night in many cases. So there is, however, an alternative. Now, let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm not going to tell you what you need to do, but consider this alternative. There is a regional carrier in the Pacific Northwest, also operated by Amtrak, called the Cascades. And the Cascade line runs from Eugene, Oregon, all the way up through Seattle. It even goes up to British Columbia in Canada. Now, this train runs multiple times a day between these cities. So for the purpose of my trip this year, I decided to end my trip on the Coast Starlight as I go from LA towards Seattle. I'm going to stop and stay in Portland instead of Seattle, even though I will be visiting Seattle. So what I'm going to do is stay in Portland in hotels that are about half the price. And then, instead of arriving late in an afternoon and not being able to do much for the rest of the day, I will have the opportunity to arrive in, take a commuter line, that regional carrier from Portland up to Seattle, where they have routes several times a day. I can pick my time to leave and arrive. I can get there as early as, I think, about 10 a.m. in the morning. And they have trains leaving Seattle back to Portland as late as 11 o'clock at night. So it gives me a lot more flexibility. It reduces my cost. It gives me multiple train times to choose from. And it lowers my hotel costs because of using the Cascade line. And this is not unique to just the Pacific Northwest. I mean, Los Angeles has the same thing. It's called the Pacific Surfliner. It's a regional carrier for Amtrak that runs between San Diego through LA, all the way up through Santa Barbara, all the way up the coastline to San Luis Obispo, and it runs multiple times per day. So you can utilize that in the Los Angeles area. And a lot of cities have light rail options. I mean, Dallas and Fort Worth, Atlanta, Chicago, all of these places have light rail commuter lines that you can mix and match that with local carriers and Amtrak lines to take the best advantage possible of getting from one place to another easily. Now, purchasing the right ticket gets easier when you know all of the options. And what I've given you today is not a comprehensive list, okay? These are just helpful ideas that I've learned through my travel, traveling by train and commuter lines here in the U.S. and in Europe. And if you've discovered something that has helped you in your travels, maybe I didn't mention it today, a new way to save money, share them in the comments. Let's put our heads together, because putting our heads together, we can learn a lot of new things and ways to have fun on our next Amtrak trip and get the greatest possible value out of our investment. So, all aboard.